It's 1966, and a flight of F-105 Thunder Chiefs are going to bomb targets near Hanoi. The Thunder Chiefs expect their normal resistance, ground-based SAM sites. But what they meet instead is fully armed MiG-21 fish beds that the Soviet Union had just given to the North Viet Cong. By the end of the day, yet another F-105 would not return home. Vietnam was split into two after World War II as a part of an agreement. The North lay North Viet Cong, supported by the Chinese and the Soviet Union, and the South is South Vietnam, supported by the United States. After aggression from the North, an eventual invasion occurred. The fear for America was that if Vietnam fell, all surrounding countries in Asia would turn to communism. The South Vietnamese were not faring well against the guerrilla tactics of the North Viet Cong. Despite their use of air power, there still was not a concise area for them to strike back against the North Viet Cong. South Vietnam was drowning. The United States had to deploy its forces, but this was unlike a war that they've ever fought. Instead of going up against enemies in massive large-scale battlefields, the enemy could be nowhere and everywhere at once. The North Viet Cong were supplied through a series of tunnels. They chose when and where they sparred with American forces, making their resolve much higher. The United States' retaliation was Operation Rolling Thunder, the largest conventional bombing campaign in history. Their goal was to sever supply lines that were crucial for the Viet Cong to continue to feed its guerrilla war. American planners thought they were dealing with scattered surface-to-air missile sites, but as it would turn out, that was far from the case. Instead of scattered sites, they were all interconnected, using ground control to route MiG interceptors en route to the bombing runs. They were all expertly concealed by foliage and fatal to American aircraft. Despite using their aging MiG-17s, they used them incredibly effectively, using altitude to dive down on bombers on their return flights from bombing their missions, and absolutely rain havoc onto the American planes. The combat losses for Americans quickly began to mount up, and command realized it. Even worse, the already deadly North Vietnamese were receiving a brand new interceptor, a state-of-the-art Soviet MiG-21. Equipped with heat-seeking missiles that would prove deadly to American aircraft. One of the main bombers used by the Americans was the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, initially a nuclear strike bomber, but updated to be a conventional one. Its maximum speed was Mach 2.1 at 35,000 feet. It was also armed with an M61A Vulcan 20mm cannon. But when fully loaded, it was sluggish. and had no chance against the fully armed MiGs. As the losses quickly began to mount, the USA would deploy MiG caps and a variety of support aircraft with the initial strike bombers to protect them from all MiG interceptors. But still, their flight plans were predictable, as there wasn't that many ways to get into the heart of Vietnam. The North Vietnamese would dive onto the bombers at supersonic speeds before quickly firing away their infrared-seeking missiles, forcing the bombers to abandon their payloads before they even reached their targets to evade the missiles. They would be gone before the F-4s could intercept them. These tactics led to increased F-105 losses. Captain Robert Olds Jr. was not your ordinary commander. Son of Major General Robert Olds, he had basically been born into combat. He earned the title of Double Ace in World War II, recording 12 victories. In 1966, he was given a command of his own fighter wing, but this fighter wing was undertrained in dogfighting. And to make matters even worse, just a couple weeks after he arrived, the first F-4 Phantom was lost to a MiG-21 in combat. Olds' men were fighting with their hands tied behind their backs because of the strict United States rules of engagement. These were made to hopefully not draw China or Russia into a war. They were drafted over 1,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. The North Vietnamese knew the Americans' constraints and exploited them perfectly. But Robert Olds had a plan. It was risky 100%, but if he could pull it off, it would absolutely diminish the MiG-21 force that the North Viet Cong so proudly had. His plan wasn't to impersonate F-105 Thunder Chiefs by adopting their call signs and flying their established bombing routes. They would even carry the exact same electronic jamming pod that the F-105 carried to match their electronic signature, forcing MiG ground controls to intercept to what they would think would be F-105s, when in reality, they would be fully armed F-4 Phantoms. With forward flights destroying SAM sites and radars, and the skies over Vietnam being cleared of all Allied aircraft, this would allow the Phantoms to have full reign over the sky. They would be sent in flights, forcing their ground control to vector MiGs to intercept. On top of that, a second fighter wing would cut off access to the airfields, leaving them completely defenseless. Brass approved it, and it was given the operational name Operation Bolo. Captain Robert Olds, not being one to command from behind a desk, is piloting the lead Phantom. He assumes call sign Olds 1, followed by Olds 2 Olds 3, and Olds 4. The flight rips through eerie calm, but Olds knows that ground control has to vector MiGs soon. The weather is less than favorable. Indeed, the operation had been postponed one day, but American aircraft already clear of the skies, so it's now or never. This bad weather grounded the East Force, leaving only the deception of F-105s. Each flight was spaced 5 minutes out, in order to apply relentless pressure on the North Vietnamese. All of a sudden, the calm is broken with a single contact at 12 o'clock. Olds 3 dives to intercept, but the contact is lost. Another MiG at 5 o'clock, and 7. The F-4s are surrounded. The MiGs have taken the bait. They immediately ditch their fuel tanks and turn hard into the incoming contacts. Robert Olds fires 2 Sparrow missiles, but both of them fail to track. Olds 3 finds himself with a MiG on his 6. A short cannon fire forces him to brake hard right. Olds 2 finds himself in perfect firing position. He launches a Sparrow, but it fails to light. His second one tracks beautifully and slams into the rear stabilizer, downing the first MiG-21. With MiGs threatening the rest of his squad, Olds 4 dives down to intercept and provide cover to them. He can't get a lock with his Sidewinder. He fires blind and it tracks, slamming into the tail of the MiG. Another MiG pops up on the radar, but this one is Robert Olds. He turns his plane to intercept and throws it into full afterburner. He knows he cannot outturn the MiG, so he opts to go above and dive into its turn. Once on the tail, he fires 2 Sidewinders. One tracks, taking down the MiG. Olds' flight recorded 3 MiG shot down, but they were out of fuel, and Olds orders his flight to return back to base. But with other flights entering the AO, it was only a matter of time before more MiGs would shot down, 1 by Ford Flight and 3 more by Rambler. The North Vietnamese would not put up any more of their precious MiG-21s, as they lost half of their fleet. This would be used again, this time mimicking surveillance aircraft. This time, 2 more MiG-21s were shot down. This turned the kill ratio of American aircraft from 2-to-1 before Operation Bull to approximately 15-to-1 in January 1967, an incredible jump. The MiGs were grounded as their pilots retrained on other aircraft. Giving Americans precious air superiority over Vietnam.